everybody. Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome back, finally, after a long hiatus, to the Rutgers Rant. We actually have a name for it that we can use. That's very exciting development here for all of us. I am joined, as always, by Keith Sargent, James Cratch. Guys, I've missed you a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. Good to be back on the podcast.
Well, I want to start off by, are we allowed two things? One, I'm assuming we're going to need to rant, considering that's the name of the title. So I guess we need to rant. Otherwise we're disappointing or not living up to the name. And two,
fair.
Are you guys even allowed to criticize after your, I'll call it a pathetic showing in the Eric LeGrand cornhole tournament? Are you guys even allowed to critique anyone else's
53 seconds into this thing and you're already going there? I figured you would, but I thought perhaps it would take longer than that. But listen, just so you know, Cratch and I, did a lot of soul searching. We talked about where we went wrong and what we did wrong, and we both reached the conclusion that it's your fault.
Yeah,
because where the hell were you? Yes, where were you? We're there supporting Eric LeGrand, the greatest human being that on this planet, in his cornhole tournament, doing our best. Neither one of us very good. Here's a guy who's got a picture of himself playing cornhole, ready to tweet out to people on his phone. He's got a picture of himself playing cornhole, and he's not there. Cratch, he's a disgrace, right? We can agree. We both can vote for him as a total disgrace.
Yeah, it's his fault.
It's his fault, of course. And then we play, and we'll move on, folks. We're not going to talk about this all 45 minutes here in the podcast, but we play this team in the recreational division of Eric LeGrand's cornhole tournament. And this woman, it was incredible. She was like 87 pounds. Her name's Allie. Every throw she made went in the hole. It was just an utter humiliation. We lost like 21-6. I don't know how we got to 6. Anyway, but it was a great day. Eric's a great guy.
Eric's the best.
Sorry. So we've got some business here first. If you guys have not seen this yet, this is a new feature we have at NJ Advanced Media called Project Text that we're unveiling this week. We're really excited about it. It's a way we can communicate with people, via their cell phones, just have a conversation with the most diehard Rutgers fans and give a little information before the information's even out there. So I'm hoping that you guys will subscribe to this, Cratch. We have a special offer. Is that right?
We do. So if you have not yet subscribed, we have a special promo code that'll give you 50% off your first month. The promo code, very simple, folks, podcast.
Wow.
Capital P, capital O, capital D, capital C, capital A, capital S, capital T. I spelled podcast right, guys. That's correct.
That was helpful. I'm sure they couldn't figure it out.
I just want to lay it out. So you drop that promo code when you sign up. Go to NJ.com. It's pinned to the top of my Twitter page. If you're looking for the link, gives you all the information. Great. Sign up. You'll get 50% off your first month. It's a lot of fun. We've had a great response so far. It's just, the three of us. Todrick's also involved. Just, 3 to 5 times, more like 5 times a day. Just, letting you know what's going on around Rutgers, some inside information, some things we're seeing, some things we're hearing, all that good stuff. So just look, I'm not going to toot our horn too much here, but no one covers Rutgers athletics like we do at NJ Advanced Media, Star Ledger, NJ.com. And this is just another kind of a new frontier we're investigating and investing in with this.
Absolutely. And what part of it, and we're going to get to it later in the show, but we also want people who are part of Project Text to give us questions for the podcast and topics for the podcast. And we've got 3 really good ones this week, so we're going to get to them later. But let's start. This is it. Big first couple of days of camp. You guys have been out there. I think we should just start with the general, what's the vibe? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? It's always optimism at the beginning of the new season, but after last season, is it tempered? Give me your sense, guys. What's going on?
I think the team is optimistic, but I don't think anybody outside the Hale Center is.
Right.
That's what I would say. Look, I don't think there's any football team in America that shows up to the first day of practice and it's like, we're going to get our heads kicked in this year and people might get fired. Like, no one says that, obviously, but outside the team, I just, fans have very low expectations. Media has very low expectations. Hell, I would say people at Rutgers who aren't intimately involved in the program, but obviously people, who have a vested interest in Rutgers athletics, they don't think much is going to happen from this season.
Right.
It's just, I mean, there's just not a lot of buzz, and we'll get to one of the reasons why I don't think there's a lot of buzz in a second. It's been a hot topic for the fans on the message boards lately. But I think the team thinks they're going to surprise the world, and the rest of the world is like, yeah, we'll see it. No, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny because I think because so much rides on the quarterback play. As much as, we go into every training camp and it just seems like it's a yearly, every single season Rutgers has a quarterback competition. In a lot of ways, so much of their success, and I know you wrote about it on the first day of training camp, Steve, but so much of it rides on whether or not they're actually going to get some consistent play out of their quarterback position, which was clearly the worst passing attack in the country a year ago. Chris Ash has said ad nauseum at this point that they don't really need a quarterback who's going to win games, but really basically they need a quarterback who's not going to lose games. And by that I guess he means don't throw the ball over to the other team as often as he did a year ago. Art Sikowski threw 18 interceptions, and you just can't have that. It's the reason why they brought in McLean Carter. Sikowski does appear, from what we've seen from practice, he's handled all the first team reps, no surprise. But at some point, I pressed Chris Ash on it today. At some point, after everything's installed, the offense is installed, we're going to see a true competition. And that's probably going to be about maybe 2 weeks into camp, whether or not McLean Carter, who is who Chris Ash said has something that you can't teach, and that's football savvy, moxie, and the ability to make plays out of nothing. Whether or not that can translate and can leapfrog McLean Carter to the starting job will be time will tell. But for now, I think so much of it hinges on quarterback.
Right. I mean, I get the strong sense that Art's going to be the starter, but there's no doubt in my mind that McLean Carter's going to play at some point. The question is, I guess, when you look at the schedule, I mean, they've got those games early on. Obviously you got to be UMass or they're just going to burn the stadium down. But then next week, Iowa, it's a tough road game, but still, it's not the Ohio State level game, and then, the season rides on Boston College. So you've got to have your offense ready to go, to win that or to win those early games, or we're headed for a disaster. I think you agree, right?
Yeah. The thing I'll say is, Art was the best quarterback. There's no reason, it's revisionist history for anyone to say that, Art shouldn't have started last year from the get-go. He was the best quarterback. Cratch and I were both around the team as much as anyone. He was the best quarterback in training camp. He was the best quarterback, throughout fall practice. He was the best quarterback on the team. And yes, he was abysmal on game day. So whether or not they can solve those 3 hours on Saturday is going to be the challenge for John McNulty and Chris Ash, because I'm pretty convinced that Art Sikowski is going to be the best quarterback, at least based on arm talent, based on, passing the eye test. You're going to have confidence, or, John McNulty, I think, is going to have confidence coming out of training camp that Art is the guy. But what happens, not just the UMass game, maybe not even the Iowa game, but week 3, when they play against Boston College, what happens then? And I think that, more than anything is the reason why you bring in a guy like McLean Carter, because if all else fails and you need to break glass in case of emergency, you have a guy who has played, who has some experience, who has some football moxie, as Chris Ash said today. You have a guy who you could turn to. But I agree with you, Steve. I think it'll be Sikowski who gets the starting nod, and I think McLean Carter, I think, has a very good chance to play at some point.
I will say this. I think the McLean Carter thing, look, I get the only guy who's more popular with the Rutgers fan base than the backup quarterback is the backup quarterback who no one has ever seen. So, but there was this perception that basically Ash and McNulty went out and found McLean Carter to bump Art out of the spot. That's not true. I mean, my reading from talking to people is that McLean Carter just happened to be a guy whose name was in the transfer portal who called back. Rutgers knew.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Rutgers knew. No, Rutgers knew going out of the spring. Rutgers knew that Johnny Langan, the waiver, they still didn't know the waiver was going to be denied, but they knew that was up in the air. And I think they also realized that, Johnny Langan, I don't know if his future's at quarterback. They knew that they had Cole Snyder, who's a true freshman who, that's one of the other things that fans are calling for Cole Snyder. And I have to say, you saw last year how tough it can be for a true freshman quarterback in the Big Ten who was high 3, 4-star recruit, depending on who you ask, who played at IMG with all these college players. Now you want to take a kid who has less physical tools and gifts from an even lower level of competition up near Buffalo and put him in the game? I mean, that's not going to work, guys. So they knew they needed a veteran quarterback. I think a lot of teams do. They just pull up the transfer portal, figured out what names were quarterbacks, and they started making phone calls. And they reached out to a bunch of guys, but McLean Carter just was the fit. So I don't think they really knew a whole heck of a lot about him until he got here. I don't think it's one of these things where this is a done deal. I do think Art's going to be the starter, and I think that honestly, it's in the best interest of McNulty and Ash for their futures here that Art is the starter because two things. One, I think a BC game is the fork in the road for the season for Chris Ash's tenure here. If you beat Boston College, you're probably maybe 2-1. You figure you beat UMass, you lose to Iowa, you beat BC, you're 2-1. That's your best win Ash will have had at Rutgers. It's the signature victory, which is what Pat Hobbs told, me and Sarge when we were out in Chicago that he wants to see this program have this year. It's a signature win. The fans, there's a little bit of, even though you're going to lose to Michigan the next week, you're going to come home to play Maryland at 2-2. There's going to be people in the stands. There's going to be hope. There's going to be optimism. You start to see a path to 6 wins. If you lose to BC, then where's it going? It's not going anywhere, but you're going to be 1-3 because you're going to lose to Michigan. And then you've got that stretch and you might not even be able to make up enough room in that kind of 5-game, 6-game soft stretch that comes after the Michigan game. So, and I also think if Rutgers starts McLean Carter and wins 4 games this year, what do they really accomplish?
Right. Well, that's a great point.
He's a guy who they just imported in from Texas, who's going to be on campus for 8 months.
And in the same exact spot next year. You bring Evan Simon in, you haven't developed anything. Now, if Chris Ash goes and wins 4 games with Art, I think 4 is one of those magic numbers where there's going to be a big time debate around the fan base and behind closed doors at Rutgers about what they're going to do. But if he wins 4 games with Art, I think he's got a lot better leg to stand on than he wins 4 games with McLean Carter. And it wasn't just, to be clear, it wasn't just Art's problem last year, but to make the step from a guy who threw 18 interceptions to improve, he's obviously going to get better than that. But still, it's hard to imagine him going from that to, a situation where, okay, now he is a competent, really a good college quarterback. But I mean, I guess that could be mitigated, Sarge, if they finally find someone who will be reliable to catch the ball. And I get the sense, at least if you're looking for optimism, that you feel better about that than you would have this time last year. Is that, am I mischaracterizing that, or do you think that they will have receivers who are at least competent this year?
100% yes. And that's probably my biggest takeaway just from watching practice. I think they might have a couple of playmakers. I got that sense coming out of spring camp. I'll tell you one guy, who, I think is going to have a great year. He's going to break out is Davon Robinson. He looks the part. He had a great spring camp. I think he's really picked up where he left off. And I think, Isaiah Washington and, Stanley King, those 2 guys, they look the part. They do. We've been talking about it for a long time. Where are those guys like Kenny Britt and Muhammad Sanu and all these guys who Rutgers would seemingly produce every year? Mark Harrison and Brandon Coleman, all these guys who, you just say, wow, that's an NFL player. Where have they been? Chris Ash had trouble, landing any of them in the last couple of years, even though there's been some who have come out of New Jersey, some recruits, wide receiver recruits they haven't been able to get. Now I think they might have a couple. And, I think that might be my biggest takeaway coming out. I think that, Sikowski, you're right, wasn't the whole problem. I've heard some stats that, that they might have led the country in drop passes a year ago. I think that was obviously a big issue. I think that could be a big improvement this year.
All right. So we did this last year. We did this the year before, our true and false segment. As always, guys, I'm going to give you a statement. We'll just say true or false. We'll go to the next one. At the end, we'll come back and discuss them. All of these this time are going to have a theme. This is exciting, isn't it? First podcast, Bulletin's got a theme. As you know, last year in the fall, Pat Hobbs said 2 words that matters more about Rutgers football than any other right now. Those words were significant improvement. So that will determine what happens to Chris Ash. So here we go. True or false? Quarterback play will be significantly improved in 2019.
True.
Okay, Sarge.
True.
The offensive line will be significantly improved for 2019.
False.
False.
False. The running game will be significantly improved.
False.
False.
Sarge? False. The pass rush will be significantly improved.
I'm going to say true. We'll get to that.
Okay. All right.
True.
True.
Yep.
Linebackers will be significantly improved.
True.
True.
Okay. The secondary will be significantly improved.
False.
False.
True. I think Damon Hayes is going to be another guy who's going to emerge into an NFL player by season's end.
Coaching will be significantly improved. Cratch?
I'm going to say true.
Okay. Sarge?
True.
The stadium's name will be significantly improved for 2019.
Oh, boy.
Sorry, Cratch?
False.
Sorry.
No comment.
It was a great deal. It was a great deal for Pat Hobbs.
Finally,
I'll leave it at that.
The last one, 4 wins. 4 wins is enough to show that this team has significantly improved. Keith Sargent, James Cratch, who wants to go first?
I'm going to say false. I don't think that 4 wins will be perceived as a confirmation of significant improvement when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I'll say false as well, kind of to echo that. I mean, the problem is they did that 2 years ago. And
right.
So it's been there, done that. 4 wins,
yeah.
You know.
Well, let's start right there because that is really what it's all going to come down to this year. And I agree with the two of you. And it's this, and this is what I come back to. Let's say it's 4, and the 4 are UMass and Liberty, which you kind of have to have, right? And then you get a Maryland and you get an Illinois. Can you really, at the end of this, can you feel good about what happened?
No.
You know, you just look at it and you're like, all right, now your program is 11-37. You still haven't beaten a team you weren't supposed to beat. I mean, you still haven't sniffed the bowl game. It's just hard to imagine.
And you're missing the great, I think they'd be riding a 5-game losing streak to end the season if that scenario plays out, right? I mean, I think, then you would be talking about a winless November and, a 5-game losing streak to end the season. So.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Absolutely. That's not a successful year.
So, all right. So going through the true or false, it seems like you guys are hopeful though that, at least the defense, will be quote unquote significantly improved. I mean, go through this. Well, what makes you think, I'm surprised you both said true on the pass rush, just because there's concerns about the defensive line. And I'm a little surprised that, you both said the same on the secondary because you're bringing a lot of guys back. I mean, what's going to be different?
The reason why I said yes on the pass rush, well, 2 things. One, I think Loomer and Turdov, Chris Ash has not had a tremendous amount of player developmental successes, but those guys are 2 of them. I think they're both going to have big years if they stay healthy, and both guys were dinged up last year. But I agree that there's major issues on the defensive line, especially interior, and Rutgers is still waiting on Ron Johnson to show up. I mean, they still think he's going to, but I mean, until he gets in, I think they've got to kind of hold their breath.
Right. But you can't count on a guy like that now at this point.
No, you can't. But they have depth. I'm not saying we don't know if they have quality, but they have depth at the at defensive end, defensive end, strong side linebacker. Naheem Anderson, T1 Mason, CJ Onyechi, Loomer we mentioned, that they're very high on Robin Jutretten, from Sweden who came over redshirt year, Jamri Chroma. They think they have guys on the edge. And I think that given the issues, that the lack of depth and size they might have inside, we could see a situation. Andy Boo called the defense a 3-4 defense after practice today. And I know that Chris Ash would say we're multiple. I could see them getting creative. I don't want to call it like the NASCAR package the giant Super Bowl teams used to have. But if they can get some of those pass rushing guys, more of them on the field, give up a little bit of size up front, maybe deploy them creatively. I get the sense that Andy Boo was brought in once obviously they had to move on from Jay Neiman because the defense last year for the first 6 games was an embarrassment. And it just as bad as the offense. I think people kind of forget about it as the way the defense finished. I think Andy Boo has been tasked with let's get creative. Let's find ways to, Ash said he's an aggressive guy, generate pass rush, blitzes, packages, all that. I think that's why I'm not saying the pass rush is going to be dominant, but they've been one of the nation's worst pass rushing teams 4 straight years now. Yeah, there's not much so I do think they'll have more production there, but I think it's going to come down to can they get those guys on the edge to crash in. If
you go down to the smaller front, I get that's a part of Rutgers lore. That's what Shiano did. The problem is against the Big Ten. Now you could get pushed around in the running game. Sarge, I mean, look at from your standpoint. Do you see the defense as becoming a strength enough that it can mitigate the offensive problems? I mean, what's your takeaway on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Crash said. I think, I was impressed by Andy Boo in our interactions following practice. I talked to a few players. They've all said that he's a really good teacher. Time will tell whether or not he has the ability to play call defense. His track record has been okay. Hasn't been, eye popping by any means. But, I will give him the benefit of the doubt. Obviously Jay Neiman's play calling, I think he had that responsibility taken away from him, by season's end. So that was indicative. And I do think depth is going to be, a big factor as well. If you remember a year ago at this time, we were talking about, the 8 guys, mostly from the secondary who were not part of the program, due to the legal issue. I think depth is going to be a major factor. Chris Ash also talked about during the summer that NCAA rule in which that allowed freshmen to play in as many as 4 games at any point in the season. A handful of guys took advantage of that by playing in November, and I think that's going to be going to have a big benefit. That experience, I think depth, I think all will help this defense.
All right, so one more I want to address for the personnel. You both said false to the offensive line. Is that entirely the loss of Jackson, or is that just overall, when you look at what this unit is, what they're bringing back and the pieces they're putting together, that give you concern?
Yeah, I think, he was, almost like a lot of fans really did not think that Tariq Cole was any good. He was injured a lot last year, but he was a 3-year starter in the Big Ten. To expect Raekwon O'Neal, who has never started a game, to all of a sudden come in and become an all Big Ten, left tackle protecting the blind side, I think is a little naive. I mean, I think he's going to have to get his feet wet, get some experience before you have any faith in him. I think the strength of the offensive line, hasn't even played yet. We haven't seen at least, I guess he's been sidelined early in training camp, and that's Mike Maietti at center. Beyond that, I know there's a new offensive line coach, and Chris Ash has talked about some of the techniques that that they've implemented that maybe will help. But it was a really big weakness a year ago, and it was a big reason why, for the struggles for the quarterback. They weren't, John McNulty has pretty much came out and said that was the reason why, you only got a glimpse of his game plan, on most weeks a year ago, that they were handcuffed by the inability of the offensive line to give the quarterback any protection. Do I have faith that it's improved? I don't, not yet.
Right. And everything revolves around it.
For me, it comes down to the personnel. The line was bad last year. You've taken Jonah Jackson, a guy who Rutgers fans have downplayed him, but he was your best offensive lineman. He was the team captain. And I've talked to people who have told me they think there's a good chance that he's going to get drafted, in the 2nd or 3rd round of the next year. That's where it's after a season at Ohio State. You lost Tariq Cole, who again, he was injured. You know, he was a 3-year starter. Now you're putting in Raekwon O'Neal, who's played 4 games in his career, and I think basically he was on like the extra point team before he redshirted last year. So you got a new left tackle. You know, Kamal Seymour is a guy who's been up and down his entire career. You know, Zach Vineski is a great story. So is Nick Crimmin. These are guys who have played in the past, but we don't know what they look like over a 12-game season.
Right.
We've seen him kind of in, you know, Maietti is, you know, it's amazing. Mike Maietti went from a guy it seemed like they were trying to he was out of the starting lineup in spring practice in 2018. He's gone from being odd man out to start the spring of 2018 to the best offensive lineman they have, which is something I don't think a lot of people expected. And then, you know, we got a question on Project Text. There's this narrative that is formed that, like, it was all A.J. Blazek's fault. And now that Pete Rosamondo is here, like, the 7 blocks of granite are going to be reincarnated in Piscataway. I don't buy that. Like, clearly Ash, I mean, look, AJ went to North Dakota State. He left on his own volition. You know, truth lies somewhere in the middle. There are people who say AJ left on his own. There are people who say Ash wanted to move on from him. Whatever happened, you know, okay. But again, I just don't see the personnel there, 1. 2, you can make an argument that Mike Maietti, and I'm working on something on this, is the biggest developmental success that Chris Ash has had of any of his recruits at Rutgers so far. Well, A.J. Blazek had to develop the guy. I don't think the guy has got better overnight. Okay, A.J. got Vineski from the 5th team into the starting lineup. Okay, you know, A.J.'s worked with Seymour. He's worked with, so I think the idea that A.J. did nothing here is a little bit over the top. And I know that, you know, that's a narrative that, you know, some corners of the Rutgers fan base want to push. I mean, we'll see after the BC game. We'll see because they're going to have to block a lot of big boys this year in Big Ten play.
Yes, they are.
What I come back to is they were talking up the offensive line during spring ball. And granted, they did get some injuries in spring practice on the line, and those injuries kind of happened in a time when we weren't watching a whole lot of practice. But what I saw from the line during the spring, I was not impressed. I did not see improvement. So I think that unit's going to struggle again. And it doesn't matter who the coach is. I mean, there's only so much you can do. You can be a great coach, but if you don't have the hogs up front, you're in trouble. And right now, I don't know if Rutgers has that.
Yep. All right. So one last point, and I did not want to belabor this, but I did ask the question about the name, true or false, SHI Stadium. Look, guys, I didn't write a column about it, showing some rare restraint for me. It's a tough name, and I understand all of the things about. All right, they need the money. They can't turn down cash. It's a bottom line business. It's Rutgers. They're bleeding, hemorrhaging money in the athletic department. I just can't believe that someone didn't tap Pat Hobbs on the shoulder and say, do you realize you're putting the first 3 letters of a poop emoji on the side of your stadium? I'm just, Sarge, you're closer to this than I am. Was there a second deal? Was there a way to avoid this? Or am I wrong? Which is entirely possible.
No, there wasn't a second deal. I mean, Pat Hobbs, is a smart guy. He's a smart negotiator. And I do know of a certain bank that was involved, at least in the RAC, naming rights, which I think at some point this fall, that has a chance to get closed as well. Pat Hobbs initially wanted to bundle the two, both the RAC and the stadium. And, at one point he had a grand vision of maybe an airline. We've talked about this before in the podcast where, airplanes fly over, the football stadium and the basketball arena all the time. And, maybe you can, package a deal. That wasn't happening.
The bank wasn't Prudential of Omaha, was it?
It was not.
You get it?
I got it.
You see what I did there? Okay.
I do.
All right, sorry.
I do.
Move on.
So, yeah, you've been covering Rutgers for a long time. I've been covering Rutgers these deals just don't happen. He doubled, the bottom line is he doubled the deal that Tim Pernetti got less than a decade ago. Those deals don't just happen. If you look, around the country, where that $1.4 million deal to start and then it goes up to 1.8 by the end. where that ranks, that, it is comparable to what a lot of like Illinois and Purdue's and those types of schools have gotten for naming rights deals. So again, the one thing I'll say about the company, and I've done a lot of research on them, is, they've been around since 1989. And I get that, sports is different. So, you're dealing with social media and you're dealing with, just the perception, in a lot of ways, but they've been able to survive since 1989 and they're a $1 billion company. So somehow, some way in the world of IT and tech, they've been able to survive with that name, with those initials. So, I don't know. I mean, I think they might not have, Cratch and I have been around Rutgers all week. Highpoint.com is still on the stadium.
It's still on there.
I was going to say, it's August 6th. I mean, August, 24 days to kick off.
By August 30th, he's going to be on the field. He's going to be on the stadium, and a whole new set of Rutgers fans will see it on TV, and the joke will come again. But again, I think it's naive for people to think that the better deal was out there.
I just wish they I don't know. I just come back to it that they handled the rollout better or do something to the lesson, because, and it's not, I mean, I've talked to a bunch of Rutgers fans who are also like, I just can't believe this, so there's a level out there.
No, I do agree with that. Like, I mentioned to someone at Rutgers, the perfect thing I would have thought was, okay, we know this is coming, get the CEO, get Pat, do a fun video, put it on Twitter, like poke fun at yourself. Because honestly, like I'm of the opinion that like people made their jokes on Twitter and they've forgotten about it. And Sarge is right; they'll probably make a little bit more when you have the UMass game. Then it's over with. I think if you do something like that, like you poke fun at yourself, make a little Twitter video, people laugh at, you kind of neutralize it and you kill it before it even starts.
But I mean, Kalini, you had a good point too, and I'll just finish the point with this: is a lot of it stems from Rutgers being 1-11. I mean, let's just be honest. Of course, because if it's Alabama, no one cares. Alabama's just going to say, you know what, fine, make fun of our stadium name. We're going to come out and roll you this week. Rutgers, right? Part of it, the whole poop emoji that you bring up stems from the perception that Rutgers has been really, really bad, and I think, a part of it stems from Rutgers having to outplay and, prove people wrong on the field.
Absolutely. And that is absolutely the case. If the team were better, maybe we wouldn't be laughing about it, but I suspect we would still be. All right. So let's go to the part, that I was excited about, the questions from Project Text. We put it out there, before the podcast. The cool part about this thing, guys, and if you still don't understand it, well, how is this different from Twitter? Okay, well, this is, a personalized service where we're interacting with you back and forth, and we try to give you a little update, things we might not put out there in a post, things that we or more insider information, quote unquote, and then you can ask questions. So I put it out there to see what people had on their minds, and there were some really good questions, and this one to me is kind of fascinating. I'll read it off entirely to you. Much has been written about the many players in the wide receiver unit who have been waiting for us to see emerge. Do you get the sense that the newer McNulty recruited wide receivers will overtake the upperclassmen recruited by past offensive coordinators? Not so much because they may be McNulty's guys, but rather because they are just better players. And that's sort of an interesting point. You would think that you'd want some of these guys who have been in the program a few years, to show themselves as juniors and seniors. Do you agree that we might be at the point now where that's just gonna be tossed aside and we're gonna see freshmen?
I'll say yes if you count Davon Robinson as a McNulty recruit. He was a freshman a year ago. I'm not quite sure about the timeline. I'm assuming he was recruited before he even arrived, but McNulty certainly gets a lot of the credit for developing him. I'll say yes, because I think, again, I talked about Washington. I talked about King. Both of them looked apart. I think after a couple of years, I have guys, turned it on late in their careers for sure, but I think we kind of know what Mo Jabby, Bo Melton, Shamin Jones, I think we know what they are. And, I'm not saying that they don't have some football ahead of them. I'm just saying that I think there's some intrigue by guys, who I just mentioned, Washington, King, Davon Robinson. They look the part of these guys like Mark Harrison, Brandon Coleman, Kenny Britt, all these guys who, you they just passed the eye test. So I think McNulty is going to be intrigued by his new toys.
Right. Kratz, you agree with that? Any guys in there you would add that you think we're going to see come out of this?
I mean,
or guys who are left over who are going to finally emerge,
it's early, but from what we've seen from camp, the limited glimpses we've got of first team offense, I do think that they are going to give Shameen Jones and Bo Melton as many chances as they can to kind of produce. I think they do like those guys. Mo Jabby's an interesting guy. I mean, he's always in the mix because he blocks well. I think he runs good routes. I think he's a guy who they're always going to have a use for in their offense. Even today, Ash mentioned Everett Wormley, who's a guy who really hasn't done a whole lot lately. But I do think, Steve, you were there at the first practice. When Stanley King, it was like, whoa.
Yeah. It really was.
It was wow, okay, this guy looks like a player. And Davon Robinson, I don't really think that Rutgers has ever explained why they wasted an entire season having him play tight end to suddenly go, oh, this guy's a wide receiver. I mean, it should have been pretty obvious at the time that they should have put him in wide receiver to start, but that's neither here nor there.
I'll tell you what, by the end of the summer, I might be hyping him for Heisman. I really think he's...
No, another guy too, Paul Woods is a guy who's flown under the radar. I think Paul Woods is a guy who's very smooth. He's been in the weight room for a year. I think they think he could do something. I still go back to, last summer, I kept on hearing everyone loved Jalen Jordan, and they tried, I think against Buffalo, they put him in the game. He ran right down the field, he overthrew him, and that was it. They ran him for a play. They redshirted him. I think he's a guy who still might have some physical development to go through, but they do have some guys. I think most importantly, they've got bigger, taller guys. Remember last year, they didn't really have any big wide receivers. It was all guys who were around, 6'1" to 5'10". They've got those kind of tall skyscraper guys now that you can go throw the ball down the field, which is what McNulty wants to do. So I don't think they're going to completely write off guys like Bo Melton and Shameen Jones, but I do think at some point, if those guys don't start to develop as juniors, you're going to see them pull them back and go with these younger guys.
Yeah. All right. Good answers to that one. Another question. We talked about a little bit, Kratz, about the offensive line coach and what significance, in that change. I think we've addressed that one. We can move on to the next one, which was, other than winning games once the season starts, what could the program be doing right now to generate more buzz? Not even the diehards are buzzing. And that's going to be another not so small factor in this, guys. And if we're talking about 4-8 and they're in a room to decide what to do with Chris Ash, and there are games when there's 15,000 people in that building and donations are down and season tickets we know are going to be down, I have to imagine that all of this is going to factor in. Is there anything that can be done aside from winning? I'm not sure there really is. That's just, aside from getting a new leadership and getting a new coach who comes in here, rah, 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 and everybody's like, all right, this is the guy. I don't know how you generate buzz unless you're winning games.
Well, I will say this, and I don't want this to come off as self-serving, but there's a lot of fans that are upset about the lack of the kind of access, media access, fan access that they're providing during training camp.
Yeah.
And I know there's some people say it doesn't really matter. It's all about winning. But the way I look at it is if you have a group off of 1-11, if you have people that want to come watch you practice, you should find a way to let them watch practice.
Here's what I'll say. Chris Ash has adopted so much from Ohio State, and it's been, his practice schedule, I think, is pretty much on par with, what it's been for the last 4 years. But Illinois has their first 14 or 15 practices open to the fans, not just to the media, open.
Is that right? To the
NFL
fans
camps,
wow.
Obviously are, the first, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks are open to the fans. The NFL coaches are as uncomfortable with anything getting out as anyone, and they open stuff up. The fact is, Saturday's practice will be open. Yes. This isn't just a media thing, where we're complaining. We're actually, trying to work more, to actually go to practice more so that we can bring insight and to cover more and write more stories. We're not, looking to stay home on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Those are 3 days where practice is not open. scrimmages are not open. We're trying to give readers as much insight into the program as possible. And Kratz is right. I mean, there have been years, and to go back to the Schiano era, where Schiano was as much of a control freak as anyone who I've ever met. And his philosophy was open practice. I know it's a different age. And if you look around the Big Ten, college football in general, most, schools don't have completely open practices. Some, I think Rutgers probably falls on the worst end of practice access when it comes to the media. And I think you're right. Season tickets are going to be a major, major issue. The more we write, the more it creates buzz. There are probably people, inside Rutgers who might not believe that. I can give you the data and analytics to prove that. And, right now, I think that's the reason in a nutshell that the lack of buzz is tied to the practice access.
And I'll say this too. I understand, Chris Ash is a football coach. Football coaches, they want a bunker mentality. I mean, if it was up to them, we wouldn't exist, or we'd show up on game day. But I don't even fault him. I mean, this is an athletic department thing. This is Pat Hobbs. Pat Hobbs should go to him and say, look, we got to open this up, because we're talking about the beat writers, beat reporters, the columnists, we're the conduit between the fan base and the program, obviously. But at the same time too, if you have fans, I know we open the season ticket holders, we do this, that's not good enough. And not at every practice, if you're going to scrimmage on a Saturday, for the life of me, I've never understood why, when I was in college, South Carolina would always have their scrimmages open for the most part to the public on Saturday, but Steve Spurrier, I want to bring the freshmen into a big stadium and have a bunch of people here and see how they do. Yeah. So I never, if you want to close or restrict the access to the practice, because I know it's trying to jam people in the Battaglia, there might be, liability issues, people standing on the sideline, fine. But every time they have a scrimmage on a Saturday, or even the summer on a Friday, it should be in the stadium. It should be open to the fans, just because it lets fans see it and get excited, and at the end of the day, it's college football. It's not that serious. And I think you have a major issue with the lack of buzz. And
right. And you know why? You cover the NFL, correct? You know why those training camps are open. They're open because if a guy can get close to the action and see Saquon Barkley on August 10th, he's more inclined to go see him on October 13th and pay $100 for the ticket. That's the reason.
Correct.
And that's a big missed opportunity. And the other thing that comes, I think about, not to pile on, but we are in the 150th season of
that's
college
another thing
football,
too.
And they blew it. They have not used that to the level that they could have to really drum up support, to play a game there, to get interest beyond.
I don't understand they did a couple weeks ago, we're going to have this event at Rutgers on the 150th anniversary. And it's okay, so what are you doing? It's we'll tell you later. And that's not just Rutgers. That's also the CFB 150 people. And I think BTN's involved and ESPN. But it's look, guys, you guys, if it's something I wrote this, my understanding is they want to sort of bring back legendary figures, prominent figures of the past. I understand if you can't release a roster because you're still trying to lock people in, you don't want to publicize someone who's not going to end up whatever. But at least tell people this is what we're doing. I just think that Rutgers, for all the jokes, for all the losses, it has a very intense group of fans. Might not be the biggest fan base in the world, but it has a group of fans, and I don't know if they're being served as well as they could. And to get back to what Sart said, I understand this is what they might do at Ohio State. This ain't Ohio State.
No, it's not. All right, one last question and this is a good thing about the project text function as well, that if you sign up for it, you can break our balls directly to our phones. And here's I think I know who it is. I think I know who sent this one because I know at least one subscriber. And it is, were there any injuries to our favorite sports writers to report following the cornhole tournament? And what changes can we expect in the off season to avoid another early exit? And very simply, I replied to this by saying that next year we're going to do what Rutgers probably should have started doing a long time ago. We're going to cheat. We're going to bring weighted bean bags. We're gonna drill a bigger hole on the other side. I'm not sure these things would have helped us against the Michael Jordan of cornhole that we ran up against. But still, I think that's got to Cratch. I think that's got to be it. Especially if Sarge is gonna talk a big game and not show up again.
Correct. We are going to subterfuge, all that. Grease the boards or.
Grease the boards. I like that. We both throw at the same board, though. I don't know how. We'll figure something out. All right, fellas. We had 45 minutes. We got over a little bit. Anything else? What else you got to say before we sign off for the day?
I'll say this. We have a new name, obviously a new brand. We have a lot to be excited about. certainly throughout training camp, we have some stories will be there. Every day that that there's access. I think and I want to speak for Cratch. I know Politi takes off basically from December until August. Last I checked, I don't think he works during that whole time frame.
Great.
But Cratch and I certainly are going to make every effort to make this a year-round thing, and talk about, basketball during the winter and, football obviously is year-round. There's always stuff going on with football recruiting. We'll bring on Todrick Hunt every once in a while. And I think, with the new brand, new name, all the new buzz, I think we're going to try to make this a year-round thing.
One last thing, so I don't forget again. Remember, if you want to sign up for Rutgers Sports Insider, we'd love to have you. Promo code podcast, 50% off the first month. It's a lot of fun. Great response so far. Thank you to everyone who has signed up. And for those who are on the fence, take advantage of the promo code and see what it's all about.
Great. All right, guys. Good show today. Signing off as always, Steve Politi, Keith Sargent, James Cratch. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon, I'm sure, with the season fast approaching. Goodbye.